NVIDIA's earnings report is just days away, and the pressure is on this time. Here to break down what's happening with the stock leading up to earnings is market analyst Thomas Hughes. Thomas, just how much pressure is on NVIDIA this time around?
Yeah, I don't know if there's so much pressure on NVIDIA, but there is quite a lot of expectations built into the market. With the way things have been unfolding the first part of the year, the market really wants to be reassured that the AI bubble is still expanding, that there's still growth in the forecast, and NVIDIA's outlook right now is for growth to slow, but it's still a pretty solid, robust pace given the pace of growth over the last 2 years. So yeah, there's a lot of expectations built into the market this time around.
Yeah, and there's a lot that's happened between the last earnings report. We've had the DeepSeek news, which
Right.
really dropped the stock late in January. What's the stock doing right now?
The market hit a peak middle of last year, pulled back and hit a new peak. It's been struggling to hit new highs ever since then, and it pulled back right here with the DeepSeek news. But ultimately, the trend is still up. There are some fears and some headwinds to the outlook right now, but the trend is up. Assuming that the earnings report is still pretty strong, and I think it's going to be, the uptrend should continue. Right now, what I see is the market is poised to swing higher. So with a good report, the market could easily retest these all-time highs and then move up to set new highs.
That's a very optimistic outlook, especially for what could happen after earnings reports, because we've seen such a mixed bag, Thomas. Every time, even when NVIDIA does have a good earnings report, the stock kind of takes a tumble. Is that something we could see again?
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, there's so many people involved with NVIDIA, so much expectations. There are near-term traders, long-term investors. So even a good report could spark some volatility and a sell-off, but I would view that as a buying opportunity.
Yeah, I know you like the dips in NVIDIA, but I feel like this time is also a little different because there's a new conversation happening around NVIDIA and really all chip makers. And that's that they're kind of the old news and not really the future of what's going to see the biggest growth in AI.
Right, there's that phase one, phase two thought about AI. Phase one being the infrastructure and the semiconductors, phase two being the services. Those two phases really overlap. Phase one is still unfolding, the infrastructure is still being built, so NVIDIA is very strong in that regard. It's also been building out its full stack of services, so it's more than just an infrastructure company, but it's also an infrastructure services company. But then, as you said, the next wave, the services wave, will be much bigger, and that should last for even longer.
For those investors who might be looking towards that second wave of AI, check out this free report on marketbeat.com on 7 stocks that could be even bigger than NVIDIA. You can scan the QR code or click the link in the description of this video to get that free report right now and check out those other stocks. But Thomas, let's get back to NVIDIA. There's other chip makers out there that are trying to compete and even at a lower price tag too. Do you think that any other company is going to be taking market share from NVIDIA anytime soon?
There is that possibility. I think that it won't be significant for quite some time. AMD is the closest competitor, and they are still years, if not a decade, behind NVIDIA in building out their software stack, which is really what unlocked the power of the GPUs and really ushered in the age of AI. It's not just the GPUs, because AMD has great GPUs. It's the software stack, it's the CUDA operating framework that allows the NVIDIA GPUs to be harnessed for AI. AMD is working on their stack, but it's just not quite as developed.
Yeah, let's talk about new product developments too. Do we expect any new announcements to come out in this NVIDIA earnings report?
I would say that yes, we are expecting some news to come out. The big news will be centered on Rubin, which is the next generation of AI chips. The timeline for that has been greatly accelerated from what the market first anticipated. We're now looking for that chip to be released in the second half of this year. So any news regarding that will be a market mover.
And as far as earnings goes, the actual revenue coming in for NVIDIA, I think last earnings, we had some different announcements about CUDA and some other developments. Will we see that payoff coming in this report?
I think so, because NVIDIA has been expanding into new verticals, trying to address specific AI needs, and that is going to be driving growth on top of the data center growth.
Well, let's talk about strategy next.
So as an investor, I would really be cautious ahead of and after the report, wait for the news to come out, see what the market does, and then target some good entry points after that.
Yeah, I think it's fair to say expect volatility anytime an NVIDIA earnings report comes about, right?
Indeed.
So have we seen any recent updates from analysts about NVIDIA?
There was a lot of activity after the previous earnings report, a lot of upgrades and price target revisions, higher price target revisions. Not so much in the last 6 weeks, except for yesterday. Dan Ives at Wedbush reiterated his outperform rating and his price target, which is above the consensus. The consensus target is looking for 20% upside. Mr. Ives' target adds about 5% or so to that. So we're looking at a good 20-25% upside for this stock at the consensus, assuming that the report is good and that the market follows through on the signal.
And a 20% upside is great, but I think early NVIDIA investors might hear that and feel a little disappointed because this company has produced such great returns over the last couple of years.
You got to remember that 20% upside from $140 is more than what the stock was worth even just a couple years ago. So 20% upside today on top of a long-term investment is still a pretty good gain, I would say.
You can't expect this company to have, a 200 to 500% upside forever, right?
Oh no, that's completely unsustainable.
That's a realistic expectation for investors to consider when they're looking at this earnings report for NVIDIA coming up, and we'll continue to follow it too. Thomas and I will be back on here on Wednesday for a post-earnings report debrief, going through what the report says and what it could mean for you as investors. Thanks again for watching, everyone. As always, happy investing.